Welcome to Senior Living Visionaries, a podcast for senior living leaders who are looking to stay ahead of the curve in the industry. On this show, we feature leaders and innovators in senior living who are pushing the boundaries and creating new, effective services and solutions. And now, let's settle in as host Jennifer Drago connects us with today's guests.
Hi, welcome to Senior Living Visionaries, where we showcase the leaders and innovators who are shaping the future of senior living. We also talk a good deal about governance and why the work that you do in the boardroom really matters in terms of providing the strategic direction for your organization and your organization's competitive advantage. And we're going to talk about that today, starting with how to properly orient your new board members. I'm your host, Jennifer Drago. I'm a strategy consultant. I do a lot of governance work with nonprofit boards as well. I'm the CEO of Peak to Profit, and I'm so glad that you're here with us today. So again, we're going to talk about proper board orientation. It's the beginning of the year, and many of you have new board members that are starting their work on your board this year. What a perfect time to learn about how best to orient them. And it's really a multi-stage process that I'm excited to share with you. So why is orientation important? Well, first of all, it provides a foundation for that board member who may not be familiar at all with your organization or the industry in which you operate. So by providing that strong foundation, it gives that board member confidence that they know enough to offer sound advice and their expertise. Really, you're bringing a board member onto your board so that they can offer their expertise. But without a solid foundation of orientation, learning about the organization and the industry, they may want to sit back and learn and listen for sometimes the first year of their term. And wouldn't it be better instead to have them be engaging and participating right at the outset? So we're going to shortcut their learning process, and what this will also do is retain some of your board members longer. Because let's face it, one of the key areas where nonprofits fall down when they don't orient a board member is that they lose that board member sooner than they were expecting. And it can be because the board member is just lost about the organization and what it does and doesn't really feel that they can make that contribution. So let's change that. There's a study that I want to share with you that was done in collaboration with George Mason University by a consulting firm called Heidrich and Struggles. It was in 2017, but it was a survey of 509 board members, and they found that only 45% said that their organization had a defined onboarding process when they joined the board. So let's be on the front end of that and make a better statistic. Only 46% say that their onboarding experience prepared them to be an effective board member. Again, I think we can do better. When we don't have a great foundation, what happens? Well, we risk having misaligned goals, we risk having low engagement, and we also risk, unfortunately, conflicts of interest, because there may be a conflict of interest that is in place or that is occurring. And if the board member doesn't understand what the organization actually does and all of its programs and services, it may not actually see that conflict of interest in order to be able to disclose it and take action around it. So first, we're going to talk about the core components of an effective orientation. And I like to think of your orientation as not just a one-stop shop. It's not a 1-hour meeting or a 2-hour meeting or even a full-day meeting where you can have your new board members drink from a fire hose and understand all that goes on in the organization. So think of it as perhaps a multi-step process. It can certainly start with a group meeting of new board members and even new board members combined with existing board members and some of your staff leaders, sharing some of the things that we're going to talk about. But it might also include some other things, like a board handbook. So let's talk about some of these things. The first is that we're going to make sure that we share with them our mission and vision, as well as our strategic plans. We want them to be fully invested in the organization and understand the history of the organization. How did we get to where we are? What do we do today? What are our programs and services? And one of the best ways to augment that and to make your mission come alive is through storytelling, whether you might have videos of some of your clients, or you might actually have a client come in and do a mission moment to describe the impact that they had from your organization's work. The second part of a good board orientation is really talking about their roles and responsibilities. So it's interesting how we expect board members sometimes to really understand what their duties are and what their responsibilities are to your organization, but we aren't always clear in explaining that. So I think it's great to define what the duties are of a board member, and there are legal duties, a duty of care, a duty of loyalty, duty of obedience that all nonprofit boards have for their board members. And then the actual roles and responsibilities of the board, which again are pretty standard: setting direction for the organization, providing oversight, not only of their CEO, but legal, ethical, financial oversight, and then assuring that the organization has the resources necessary to do their job: financial resources, people resources, and community connections above all. We can also, as part of this discussion, talk to our board members about the difference between governance and management. So who does what? What are board roles and what are CEO roles? And how do they work together? And what are shared responsibilities? As part of this discussion, we can also talk about the committees of the board and how those help the board do its work and what the charters of those committees are. We should also provide a board calendar so that they know the key dates that are coming up. So hopefully you have your calendar of meetings, both board meetings and committee meetings, set out for the year so that as we're asking people to participate, they can block those times on their calendar and ensure their engagement. And then we can also talk about how decisions are made, including how we vote and consensus building. Another thing that we can talk about, since the board has financial and legal oversight, is give them a glimpse into our current year budget. They're going to be coming in usually at the beginning of the organization's fiscal year, so you will have just set the budget, usually at the end of the prior fiscal year. So tell them about the budget and the funding sources and some of the key financial metrics. How are you doing? Where are you getting better? Where do you need to get better? What are our key legal obligations? We might talk about IRS regulations for 501c3s. We might talk about our bylaws. We definitely should talk about our bylaws. Other compliance requirements that we have in the industry in which we operate. Are we governed by any legal bodies, any state, federal, county bodies or municipal bodies that oversee the work that we do? Do we have any grant compliance that we need to follow, and any reporting in that regard? So those are all things that would be under that category. The next thing that we would want to talk to our board about is fundraising and advocacy expectations. So this doesn't apply to all boards, but certainly if your board is expected to play a role in fundraising, to connect with donors, to be an ambassador, to be an advocate, to introduce potential donors to the organization, you want to explain what their role is in fundraising and how that fundraising really makes the programs that your organization provides doable, makes them possible. Likewise, if your board is responsible for helping to advocate with a state legislature, for example, for a clientele or for an issue, we want to share with them what that role would be, how we would like them to participate, and maybe some do's and don'ts, because for some nonprofits, we want to be careful about how we participate in the political world. Given that we are the advocates of nonprofit resources, we want to do that for causes that relate to our mission and that help us advance our mission, and be careful to stay out of other mired political issues and partisan politics. Another thing that we need to help our board with is building relationships. So we want them to meet our key staff members, meet the team members, meet their fellow board members, right? So both of those are going to build confidence of the board member in the team that you have running the organization, as well as the board leadership. We want them to meet those folks early and have some opportunity to get to know them through networking or social engagements. So please, at the beginning of your board process, and this can be part of your orientation, have a social engagement and plan to do that after the first couple of board meetings or before the first couple of board meetings a year. Have lunch together. Maybe build some board profiles of different interests that they have or expertise so that the new board member gets to meet some of the existing board members in a different way. Having that trust right at the outset will ensure that the board can engage in healthy dialogue and healthy conflict when it's necessary. So that trust is really foundational for team building. You may also want to consider having a board mentor assigned to a new board member. So this is a great way to have a one-on-one relationship so that the new board member can ask the board mentor questions that they might not feel comfortable asking in a full board meeting. So maybe after the meeting they can say, hey, I noticed this dynamic. Why did that happen? How does the board deal with that? Or I heard this topic come up, but it wasn't part of my orientation. Can you tell me more about this? So having that board mentor helps that board member, again, just to feel more comfortable, to have someone that they can ask questions of, and again, so that they can increase their participation and engagement early on. We're going to do a whole episode on board mentors in about 2 weeks, so watch for that episode. And then we want to make sure that we give the board the resources and tools to do its job and to have the appropriate reference materials early on. And so one of the best ways you can do that is by having a board manual or board handbook. And my next episode is going to be all about board handbooks and what to include in them. But it's basically a physical or digital manual that has reference materials like the articles of incorporation, the bylaws, the audited financials, key policies, the committee charters, things that should be available for easy reference for a new board member. Might also have a glossary of industry-related terms and acronyms that we tend to use in certain industries. And we can make this all available through an online portal, but that should also be part of our handbook is how do we access those materials and what are the standards that are in place for boards to be able to review those materials ahead of meetings. So that's kind of your board orientation session. Again, this can be done partially by Zoom. I wouldn't do it all by Zoom because you really want to foster that in-person engagement. Could be a series of meetings and social events that happen over the first 3 months of a new board member's term. And, shake it up, do it however you would like. But the other thing that you'll want to plan on, and your governance committee is kind of key to all of this. So your governance committee oversees your orientation process and how that works. And then they also oversee the ongoing engagement and education of all of your board members. So some things you'll want to plan in a board calendar throughout the year are some educational opportunities about your competitive environment and the industry that you work in and how that's changing industry trends, for example. Perhaps offer your board members some site visits to come and see your programs in action and maybe even volunteer in those programs, or a walk in my shoes kind of event where they might take the view of a client and have see a program in action from a client's perspective. Those are all great opportunities for board members to continue their orientation and engagement. So customization is key. Make sure that it fits your organization, and you'll really want to review this on an ongoing basis. This can be a great tool, again, to set the foundation for any board member so that they can learn the organization quickly. We shortcut that learning process so that they can be better engaged, more effective, and a better contributor to your board. Now, I want to thank you for tuning in, and to that end, I actually have a checklist for you that covers all of the things that I've just mentioned and probably a few more. You can get that by looking for a link in the show notes, and it's completely free. So we will make that available to you, and I hope that you'll use that resource. Please let me know if you have any questions for me. You can always email me at jennifer@peaktoprofit.com. That it will also be in the show notes. I really hope that you've enjoyed this episode and that you will really plan a strong, meaningful, intentional board orientation for your new board members to increase their engagement right from the outset. I'm Jennifer Drago, and you've been listening to Senior Living Visionaries podcast and radio show, where we explore cutting-edge ideas and breakthroughs, as well as governance best practices that are shaping the future of the senior living industry. Please subscribe to be notified each time an episode drops at seniorlivingvisionaries.com. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you next time.
You've been listening to the Senior Living Visionaries podcast and radio show, where we showcase the leaders and innovators in the industry who are pushing the boundaries and setting the stage for the future in senior living and services. Join us next time as we share the bold ideas and breakthroughs of the industry's most forward-thinking leaders here on Senior Living Visionaries.